and goddesses, kings, queens, titans, chaos beings, initiates, adepts, occultists, alchemists, wizards, brujas, whatever you are, remember today's the only day that matters. You are the only one that matters. For everything is a reflection from this point. Welcome to the God Hour podcast. It's your host and your master of ceremonies, Papa Lucifer. And this week we're going to be getting into the Axiom Effect. We're going to get into understanding the polarities based upon our identity. You know, we go deep into our identity. Think about this as we get into this episode. Oppression and struggle. In between these 2 points, there is a line. In order for us to do the work that is necessary for us to advance, we must define this line. Finding that middle point of that line and crossing that line. Humanity is at the bottom of that, under this line. Your higher self is above this line. Which side do you decide to take? But before we get into that, we're going to get into the God thought. You know, Papa Lucifer going to give you the reading for some clarity for this week. And then we're going to get into this week's session. First segment is going to be No Pass Go. Second segment, the prison complex or the prison penthouse. And then we're going to go into some ways to actually heal past and understand the new boundaries. But yeah, let's get into this. Welcome to the God Hour podcast. Be anywhere right now, but this resonates with you to aid you in moving forward. Ashe. Welcome to this week's God Thought. To simply agree with what is now questionable truth, profound to the labels of your humanity, existence based on what's considered to be to the occultist Stockholm Syndrome. I call it the Axiom Effect. Lack of clarity between 2 points of lower self. Crossing the line challenges the rudimentary routine to create balance in the principles of our growth. This shatters the blind faith narrative of what, with taking no responsibility, only feeds this self-imposed suffering. It's time to break from the red tape and move out of the safety of struggle and actually put in the fucking work. This is the aspect of what I call the Axiom Effect. It's that being stuck within the polarity. You have had yourself put into this mindset of struggle and oppression. So now there's a line created. Do you dare cross this line? Below this line is your humanity. Above this line is your higher self. Everything that you can strive for, everything you can be. When we think about this line, most teeter on this line trying to receive from both ends. That creates a lack of transparency. That creates more of a complex that you need more strings to connect to each side. It's time to break the line. It's time to break that tether. It's time to break that string. The only way that we can actually advance is first by aligning our minds to our divine way of thought. Aligning ourselves to our knowing. Allowing those triggers to expose the shadows that are hidden behind that red tape to bring ourselves into new light. But first you gotta get dark first. First you gotta do that work on the bottom half. Acknowledge that bottom half in order to rise to the top. But we don't get into this. Welcome to the God Hour Podcast. This was your God Thought. You know, before we get into this week's episode, this week's session, you know we gotta get into this weekly reading first. You know Papa gotta give you the reading as we get the cards shuffled up. This is gonna be I'm titling this type of reading The Line, and crossing that line and stepping past that barrier to take ourselves into that new space. As you know, Saturn's in Pluto is in retrograde. Saturn and Pluto in retrograde, so it's a lot of karmic aspects going in. So let's get into this reading so we can get some more clarity going forward. First card, pop straight out to the top. First card is the Two of Wands. Second card is the Ten of Swords. Third card is the Fortitude. I'm using a Hermetic deck, so Fortitude is strength. Fourth card is the Three of Cups. And fifth card, Queen of Cups. Let's get into this reading real quick. The Two of Wands represents the aspect of fire. Stepping into the ring and allowing all that is not you burn away. This sets the tone for the long-term decision. You've been going through an aspect of making that decision, setting that tone, and seeing what you were going to do next. This card sets that aspect of the decisions in your favor. You have the time to actually plan from this moment. Sit back and actually take that time to plan. So, as I go further into that will set up for how and what is to be discovered outside of the comfort zone you got used to. It's about stepping outside of that comfort zone. This is pulled up with clarity with the Ten of Swords. The Ten of Swords speaks of overwhelming fear of the decision may be unavailable. Push through anyway. That decision, the Ten of Swords represents the aspect of completion. So that unwavering overwhelm, that feeling of thought, that fear, all of these aspects, based on that decision that you're about to make, all of that's come to an end. You've done the work to get to this point. There's no other choice but to step forward. You saw the 2 points on that damn line. You saw the 2 points that connected that line. You defined that line. Now you're above it. From this step forward, you will have a sense of fortitude or strength. This is represented by the strength card. Using the new momentum, moving out of your comfort zone. It's mainly important to move outside of your comfort zone. Going through that fire and that cold steel of them swords, that made you ready for this moment right now. That gave you the aspect to be able to tame that energy. See, before you were jumping out there with your energy, you was making decisions half-cocked because you weren't taking enough time to actually sit back and plan. Now that you sat back, you took that time to plan, you took that time to do the work, you took that time to see what needed to be seen and made the separations that you need to. You're going to need to make more separations. A lot of karmic debt is being put onto the table, and now you're in this space of the strength that you made it through to actually tame that energy. That momentum that you're going to have. Your will, your passion, and reflecting through more refined lenses. It's reflecting through a more refined lens, a more refined taste and palate. Welcome to your higher self. This is going to bring those destructive tones or the disruptive tones into more harmonious support by the Three of Cups. From your reflection, from a place of balance. This will aid you in building the mutual relationships to build and develop, encouraging the works. It's time to strengthen the bonds based on family, not relation going forward. That's the so most important part. The aspect of what you were related to based upon the trauma, based upon the bad decisions, based upon the bad decisions, based upon not having enough information, that's what you were related to and that's what you were connecting to. But now that you have challenged that line and now you're above it, now you can actually more in a more harmonious manner with your celebrating and setting that tone and bringing yourself into balance for those cups to run over. That leads us to the last card of this spread, the Queen of Cups. I love the Queen of Cups. This will be your mastery of your emotional integrity. Represented in the Queen of Cups, the only way to keep that momentum and to see the reward for your growth is setting new boundaries that are challenging the old truths of your identity. It's time to challenge the truths of your identity. The things that you accept that as truth now are no longer going to be able to be acceptable to your higher self. This is going to be able to help you balance your empathetic nature while standing firm and not wavering in your new standards. That's your major key. You have to be able to set yourself into that balance. It's time to challenge what was said to be the standard and create the path to your highest self. That's the major key. All systems will go. Through the chaos, without chaos, you can't have creation. So you getting in that stagnant mindset, it ain't gonna do nothing for you. This has been your weekly reading. If it resonates with you, take that message and move forward. Humble to the higher self, divine day and blessed be. Ashe. You feel like you got a voice, feel like you got something to say? Feel like you have something that can move the masses or get everybody tuned in and you want a bigger audience? Whether it can be anything from something like the God Hour or anything from like sports, news, fashion week, whatever it may be. Let me put you on to something. The easiest way to do it is with the Anchor app. Biggest thing about it is free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or your computer. Anchor will even do all of the distribution for your podcast for you so it can be heard on many other platforms such as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can make money. You also can make money from your podcast with a minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast all in one place. It's everything you need to get your voice heard and get what you feel that's in your heart and enter to your heart out to the masses. If you're interested, download the free Anchor app or go to Anchor FM to get started. Welcome to another episode of the God Hour podcast. It's been a crazy last couple of days since our last episode and dropping out so much information. Make sure my levels are right on my music. Turn it down just a tidbit, like so. You know what's crazy when you got to write down notes? Because I usually don't have to write down notes, but it was so much information on this topic when it came through, when I was actually looking at it. And I had to put them notes down. But welcome to the God Hour podcast. It's your if I'm not your favorite occult psychoanalysis counselor and therapist, or one of the ones on that list. Maybe after this, most definitely after this, like you'll wanna see what I'm cooking. And I mean that from the most humble of space when I say that. But yeah, let's get into this aspect. First segment, we got no pass go. In order to become the boundaries, we have to match the standards of the God frequency, our higher self. In order to become the boundaries, we have to match the standards of our higher self and our God frequency. We tend to come in this space when we are living in the intellect. That means we live in the knowledge, like we get some information. We call ourselves a God. We have some of the information. We start moving in the information. But then when the challenges come up to challenge a God, we don't like accepting those challenges. And it's all right. I mean, it's a learning process. Overall, it's a learning process. This is where see, that's the incoherentness. The spirits are already kicking in early on us. This is where those shadows start to wreak havoc. A lot of the times, those shadows, those old thought processes, they start to wreak havoc on our intellect. Because remember, your subconscious records everything is true. So if my subconscious receives a negative thought, it's going to find aspects within my already thought program and create the necessary effect. It's going to create the necessary grounds for that to be created. That is what I call, this is what I call the Axiom Effect. An axiom is a simply stated thing that we stated is true. Like black people are and white people do, and then you follow about whatever. So that initial statement makes the rest of the components true. So when we take it into the aspect of math, because we understand that the universe is mathematics, divine mathematics, them zeros and ones, that binary code, we start seeing that those shadows that we used to hide within, or our traumas and our pains used to hide within, this is where we need to begin challenging those very old axioms. Those are very old points. Those axioms are creating those lines that we have to cross in order to actually grow. There's a very good book. I say it almost every other time, but there's a book called Revolutionary Psychologies by Samuel on Weor. And he explains that line. And you first have to acknowledge the eyes that are on that line. So the initial I would be, we would say, struggle. The other end of that line would be oppression. We'll use that in this case. So everything that I'm doing is going to be based upon that aspect of struggle. So every line is going to be tethered to basically struggle and oppression. Sometimes we get stuck in these old labels. And that's one of the biggest things. Sometimes we get stuck in these old ass labels. You should not be at this point in time, and I'm going to say this and I mean it as I grab my tea, sip my 4 blend tea. At this point in time, you should not be trying to stabilize yourself based on the labels. So think about this aspect as we break this down. You're facing these new challenges and you get smacked in the face. This is that no pass go for humanity. That line that you're going into, below that line is humanity. Above that line is your higher self. So if I take this thought process of struggle and oppression, and I've accepted the label of being black, Negro, whatever it may be, I've accepted this label. So black people struggle. Black people come from struggle. So everything that I have to do has to come from that default aspect of struggle. Black people have been oppressed for 400 years. So now everything I accept is on that line. This is that aspect of that polarity. Remember last week we got to the curious case of correspondence. This week we talking to get into the aspects of the polarity. You're going through the laws and you learn how to apply them in those layers. So now I look at that polarity. Now, everything that I'm going to do, I'm already going to naturally set myself up to the tone of accepting it based upon struggle or oppression. So I think about any of my traumas, and this is where a lot of people tend to not want to forget. You're not forgiving yourself because you have not accepted that level of you didn't have the information at that point in time. You had to go through this necessary checkpoint, or else later on in your life, you're going to go through another necessary checkpoint. The key is finding out where the original cause was that started that line, that gave you that axiom. And then I'm like, okay, cool. Now that I realize this happened here, now that I'm realizing this, I've accepted this. I'm now looking at this. I'm staring the shadow in the face. I'm dealing with it, whether it's by mirror work, whether it's by candle work, whether it's by deep meditation, whether you come to me for aspects, you go to a healer to unlock your healer, whatever it may be. I've accepted this point as this point is not of my higher self. So these labels don't hold any more merit, basically. So a label, someone saying that for someone to call me a strong black man doesn't exist anymore. I would almost get offended if I didn't do the necessary work to have the aspect of forgiveness, to have the understanding of why they see it that way. Because they're only seeing you based on their level of light. So they're only going to be able to give you a response or say something to you based upon that level of light. This comes into the aspect of this sets that need for the internal work. I can't say that enough. That aspect of shadow work, I cannot say that shit enough. You want to come into the true face of yourself is going to require you to do some real work, questioning everything to learn. And when we go into this aspect of questioning everything to learn, that's where that you got to forgive yourself first, because you have to become open to the vulnerable. You have to become open to being vulnerable for that information to permeate. Cognitive dissonance based on that Stockholm Syndrome, based on those old labels. Now you're accepting these labels based on the trauma to keep yourself into that event. So now you're stuck within this space. You don't want to do the real aspects of work. You might get lost. And if you get lost, it's okay to ask the question. It's going to be this spiral effect. You come to a point, you don't question it. You get upset because you didn't question it, or you're scared to question it. Then you're growing to an aspect of fear. You go right back into struggling with that situation. Now you're struggling with the situation. Then you're going back to the other end. So now you feel oppressed because you are not being able to do with the other people. You're not on the level that you feel that you need to be on. So then you feel weaker. You feel more out of place. And then you start going back into your predeceived hole. You start going below the line. Ooh, we almost died. Getting upset and you start deflecting responsibility, especially a time like now. Chaos is giving you the clarity that you need. The chaos is going to give you that clarity that you need. But if you're stuck on the old default of yourself, sitting there in that space, and every time something bad happens, you feel like it's the end of the world. It's not the end. It's the beginning. Remember, You came into this space, this was your ending. When you were birthed, that was your ending. You're now finding your beginnings. That's why when you start looking at information, you start reading the books, you start gathering the knowledge, you're going back into it to reinforce your beginning. You're not reading all this stuff to get to an end. Everything you're reading is going to a beginning. Think about reading Arabic. You read Arabic backwards. The language is written backwards. That's the thought process. You're reading your symbols and your signs backwards. You're reading them you're bearing witness to your own self. You're bearing witness to your light and taking it into the dark so you can learn how to work within your darkness. So when you're thinking about situations, traumas that you were in your darkest state, I'll use this example. I'm gonna create a action point real quick. And then we'll get deeper into the notes. You grew up poor. You grew up poor or impoverished. You didn't have everything that everybody else had. So you grew up poor, and then on top of that, you were treated poor. So now on one side of that first point in your axiom is you were poor. Then other side of that axiom is you were treated unfairly because you were poor. That's your line. Now, in order for you to understand this aspect, first you got to forgive you. So think about when you're trying to balance on this line of never being poor again. This is the thought process when you think about somebody saying, I'm trying to stay above water. How many people right now, how many of you are trying to stay above water? You're trying to hold on to that job. You're trying to hold on to that relationship. You're trying to hold on to that. You're trying to hold on to the last little bit of your money after child support hit. You're trying to stay above water at your job and not curse out a bunch of white people or whatever it may be. Think about how long you're balancing on a line that you don't even understand what it is. Then some people are just above water. So if my head's above the water, my head's above the murky waters, I can't see the holes, pitfalls, and the traps that I'm falling into. I can't see that I'm getting stuck in a air pocket underwater. So I'm stuck in this pocket. I cannot address the things that I need to address because I can't see them. I'm not acknowledging them because I'm not going into that. I'm not submerging myself into that space. I'm not submerging myself in there. You get stuck. Now you're not going past go. Every time you pass go, you can't collect $200. And then everything that you're doing in your whole mindset is stuck within that rhythm of, I'm trying to do this for this. So now you stuck within the old axiom of black people eat this, or black families came from struggle and oppression. That same old narrative. So you think that it's normal to see your people. You see it's normal to see your people when they're struggling. So since that became a normal aspect of your life, when you start actually tapping into your information, your royal leanies and all these things, of course you're going to want to share it with other people. Of course you're going to want to share it with the environment. But this goes into the aspect you have to understand. You'll stop doing that when you understand that line that you keep trying to go under and take that information into, take that energy into, take that thought process into. It cannot be understood there. You can't take that light into that space. You have to go above that line and turn it into a potential force. You have to make that potential energy an example. So take this aspect here. Take this thought process. I've done immense shadow work on myself. I've done all my shadow work. I'm still doing shadow work from day to day, every once in a while, but it's different now. I had a dream last night where I set up an altar in the bedroom and I put a selenite crystal in front of the mirror. I set it on top of like a jar, and I set the selenite crystal above that. I set my Santa de Muerte figurine right beside that. I got one of the little jawbreaker eye monsters from like a little off the wall corner store, and I set all these items up there. Then beside it, I got my little diffuser, and in my diffuser, I put some cedar wood oil, some dragon's blood oil, some white sage, a couple little different oils in there, and I let that run. I turned on my meditation music. Set it to I think I did Kundalini for this aspect. And then I got a speaker that lights up. So I sat the speaker there. I switched the light so it wouldn't flicker. It would like go pulse into each color slowly, so it would match with the rhythm of the music. And I laid back and I fell asleep. The craziest part about me falling asleep last night was that it was the most divine slumber, because I was going through the space in my life. I was like clearing myself out. Oh yeah, got a wine glass, poured water into it, cracked some Himalayan sea salt, dropped it into the glass. While I'm going under and I'm breathing. When I'm going under and I'm breathing, I'm saying to myself, I'm speaking to myself that I am who I am. I'm saying that I am a God. I'm saying that I'm a Titan. I'm a chaos being, all these aspects. I'm speaking these things to myself as I'm breathing in and out. As I'm breathing in through my mouth, breathing in through my nose, taking that deep breath, opening up making sure the air gets all the way down into my pelvic area, or all the way down into my root chakra, and I'm blowing out deeply. And I'm doing this nice rhythm, and I'm saying these things. At this point, I say my spiritual name, my full spiritual name. So as I'm going under, I'm going into that realm. Dream was fucking crazy. The dream was crazy. I was seeing old aspects like cutting room floor, the aspects of the cutting room floor based off all the shadow work that I did. I was seeing all the cutouts. I was seeing old relationships, friendships, all of these aspects. I was seeing old places that I used to go to, things that I used to say, conversations I was having. I was seeing all of these things falling into this paper shredder and then falling into this furnace. That was my visioning going into my space. So I'm seeing this work. I'm seeing the work being done. And then now as I'm sitting here in this physical plane, as I'm back here in the illusionary realm, I know that's being done in my mind. So I know that I've already done the work up to this point to where my mind automatically is shredding anything that does not fit at this 5D level of mindset. Because I'm no longer below, I don't have to concentrate on the below the line. Below the line, I've had the aspects of forgiveness. I've done the forgiveness. I have the understanding, the compassion. I've had all these rates put into there. So automatically, anything that is not subserve purpose that happens out throughout my day, it's kind of, my mind is literally an autopilot. So I don't have to worry about those things. But this is a process that you have to first acknowledge that those axioms of those questions that no longer serve you a purpose. Think about some of the biggest axioms are given to you by comedians, because your mind's going to take it in because you ain't going to take it serious. That's why I said earlier on, like, they'll say black people do this, white people do this. Just like right now, they'll be like, Christians do this and woke folks do this. This is spiritual. This isn't spiritual. So you're choosing sides, two sides on the same line. So now you're stuck in between this line. You ain't even figured out your line, what line you on, let alone how to deal with this line up here. You don't know. So you're tethering. This goes into the aspect of you tethering these strings. You're setting yourself up to be in this space, and you're like, what the fuck am I doing really? So now you're trying to build your whole reality, your whole space, everything about yourself. You're trying to build it based upon that. You're still trying to build your entire existence off the external aspect. The thing that's been created based on you accepting that line or accepting that narrative. You have to change your way of thinking. You have to go into this aspect of learning the path of forgiveness. Remember, forgiveness takes 6 months. For the entire process of forgiveness, it takes 6 months. Because you first got to build the habit. You first got to break the habit of not forgiving yourself. Not feeling sorry for yourself. Forgiving yourself. There's a difference. That's another fucking point. People consider forgiving something is the same thing as being sorry, feeling sorry for something. And then you create this other line over here. I forgive, but I don't forget. Think about you saying to yourself, you forgive, but you don't forget. You basically are setting the tone with an empty line. You can forgive and not forget, but somewhere on that line in between those points, you got to put up a barrier based on what you have not forgotten, based on the understanding of why it happened. So we think about betrayal. You think about your boyfriend hurting your feelings. You think about your boyfriend doing you wrong. You think about your girlfriend doing you wrong. Baby father, baby mother, job did you wrong or whatever. In reality, your job paid you for every hour that you were there. Anything outside of that, yeah, they want to see you in a certain mindset. You submitted to the attributes of that space, and when they couldn't get you to step outside of that boundary, they got upset. This goes into the aspect of when you actually start questioning your environment. This is the questions with everything. I remember being at my job, and if they said something to me, instead of me going outraged, I would like, yo, can I talk to you in the office? Or can I pull you to the side? And I would ask the questions that I needed to ask. Regardless what the answer was, the main purpose for me being in that space was to ask those questions. So I can now set my tone based on the answers that are received. I wasn't looking for an answer to make it okay for me to be upset, because I remember being online at my job, and I would be upset just like earlier on when I was still learning the ropes of in the kitchen, and I would get upset, and people could visibly see me be upset on my face. Instead of me going to go get the answers from the person or from the individual, manager, boss, whatever it was, and ask the questions to them, pull them to the side and ask them the questions, I allow myself to be stuck within struggle and oppression, because I still think I'm oppressed, I'm still down struggling, and I allow myself to sit online with others that were within that same space. They didn't have a get out of jail. They didn't get no get out of jail free card. They were in the same aspect as me. The only thing that had me locked in it was aspects of I should listen to my elders. Because most of the people, every time I was going somewhere, I was always the youngest within the space. So I'm sitting there and I'm like, listening to individuals that are older than me, thinking that they're wiser than me. But whenever the manager would come back around, they would go back to being kiss asses. So I was like, I'm confused. It's like, am I standing up for myself or am I not standing up for myself? Maybe I should follow this lead because I need this job. I need this money. I need this whatever. So I have to accept this. But then this is what happens. You start putting handicaps into your life. You start putting handicaps on your entire thought process. You start putting up bars you start putting up these different bars in your reality. Where we at? You have to understand. You have to understand this. You have to be able to take yourself to the next level in true understanding of, you have to understand math. Remember, all this shit is zeros and ones. When people say they make all this shit is zeros and ones. So you got to understand the math. You got to understand that if you make a decision, what variables led you to that decision? If I don't have a now in this stage of my life, if I don't have all the information, I'm more imbalanced to ask the question that I need to ask to get the answer. And I'm open to what I need to receive. I'm not going to fly off half-cocked. I'm not going to fly off and be angry and allow myself to be boxed into a certain position or a certain mindset or a certain label. I'm not the angry black guy. I'm the Titan. You feel me? Like, you're in a higher aspect of mind. Even when you come into the higher aspect, you got to understand that every deity that you interface with or you're dealing with on energy wise, they have a death story and they have a rebirth story, because that death story is the death of your humanity and the rising story is the rising of you into that energy. But in order to get to that point, you got to understand the variables that are within you. Take astrology. Take that thought process. Take astrology. Take numerology. Take all of these aspects, everything is all science. It's all the math and the science. When you start looking at it based on this level, it was crazy because the other night I was laying down and I literally, as I was going under, I was seeing the numbers matriculate. I was seeing the numbers matriculating as I'm sitting here looking at my, as I'm going under. I'm seeing the numbers matriculate and the illusion fall as I go into my slumber. Shit was fucking crazy. I'm seeing all these points, and then as I'm sitting there in that space, I'm seeing these points and how they're connecting in order to existing within the space. I'm seeing the variables. I'm seeing the thought form. Like, my mind went into like this Rain Man shit before I went to fucking sleep, because I could see my way past go. I could see my way past go. I could see what the fuck I needed to see. I'm starting to see more. And then this is the aspect of you breaking out of your prison cell. What was I doing? Yo, something else I wanted to say. Yeah. As I was saying there, like, there's no such thing as the mistake aspect. We're going to get right back into this after I flip this tape over real quick. Yeah, we're going to get right back into this after I flip this tape over. Da-da-da-da-da. Yeah, we're going to get into that part right here as I do this. All right, I told you we're going to come right back. This is that second part of the segment. Before we clean up and get into the prison complex, I had one more thing I wanted to break down. So I had a lot of notes on this one. Understanding that there's no such thing as mistakes. That's why I was finishing off at. There's no such thing as mistakes. We come into this space and we think that there's a mistake on our life and shit happened for a reason and, oh my God, my life is horrible. Go back to that point when you were sitting there in your space and what you created based on that space of being poor, of not having money, of not having not having money, not having love, not having whatever it may be, and think about what you created based on those two, based on that point or that box that you were in. Now you're spending your entire life running and racing above this line, trying not to make the since you don't understand the mistakes that led to your point, you're more than likely to repeat those mistakes. Yeah. You're more likely to repeat those mistakes. I use this as an example. My mother and my mom and my pops, two axioms that created the line that I was born, like I teetered on. My mother was passive aggressive. My father was aggressive passive. Until I got older, I was repeating the same mistakes that my mom and my pops did. I never understood why my moms took money and did the things that she did based on being aggressively passive, trying to survive in that survival mindset. And I never understood why my pops was the way that he was. So since I didn't understand these 2 points, I made the mistakes that they made. I remember being in earlier jobs, relationships, whatever it was, dealing with people, talking with people. I would end up talking to them like my pops would talk to me. My pops had a very condescending tone. He had a very condescending tone that was within that aspect of religion, to say this, don't ask questions, because a lot of our narratives back in the day, for us, a lot of our parents, they were in that space of don't ask questions. When I went to the other side with my father, ask me any question you want. And he gave me open, honest answers. So halfway through my life, I was battling in between whether to speak up and ask the question or not ask the question. A whole bunch of other variables come into this play. A whole lot of other things that I'm tethered to came into this play. And it had me locked in that mindset of, oh my God, I can't do this, or I can't do that, or I won't do that, because it is. I didn't want to go back to being, I couldn't, the craziest part about it was I was closed off in most of my relationships simply because I was around my father, and my father was by himself and self-sufficient. So I learned a lot of self-sufficiency from my pops. Off my mother's end and my pops, off my other side of the family's end, I learned the aspects of being independent in the basis of something being dependent upon me. So I remember listening to my pops have conversations with my mother, their arguments, they talk, they discussions back and forth. I remember them having talks, and it was always to the tone. I remember my mom would get really, really quiet. It wasn't until, I'm going to say 4 or 5 years ago, actually. 4 or 5 years ago, actually. This was like a major breakthrough in my shadow work. When I finally found out the reason my mom could not leave, or she thought in her mind she could not leave. It broke down to she was moving. She was talking about moving away from my pops and whatever this was. And I remember finally asking my mother, because she never gave me the answer. I remember finally asking my mother the true question, because my pops was like, go ask your mom ain't got no money for that. I pay for all that stuff. I thought it was a sense of control, but it was an actual aspect. Though it was an aspect of control, the bars were reinforced by her not accepting it. And that's where we get into this aspect of the prison penthouse. The traumas and everything that led to that point from my mother, that led my mother to that point, she was a prisoner in her own thoughts. Sometimes you become a prisoner in her own thoughts. Think about the movie Romeo Must Die. I think of Romeo Must Die. Remember they kept seeing him in prison. He was in Fed camp. He had a Persian rug and he had shit hung up. He had servants and shit. Or you think about Goodfellas. When the motherfuckers had servants and shit, they had the cops bringing them in fresh tomatoes and shit for sauces. You come to a space to where, based on those traumas, your original intellectual floor, the stuff that you knew of and the lines and the points that the variables that created your foundation, now that you in this space and now you're sitting there simply the richest man or the richest woman in the prison. You got the big screen TV. All right, that's nice. You got the car. All right, cool. That's nice. You got everything around you is now prison bars, reinforced by your own trauma, either directly or indirectly. Indirectly phased by you or directly phased by you. You're busting your ass at your job to stay ahead or just to stay above water. So think about you staying head above water in the moment that you're coming into your abundance and your true self, and you're still trying to apply those old algorithms to this new formula, to this new foundation. You're trying to apply the same formulas to these new points in your life. And now you're wondering why it doesn't work. Because you have the information, but you have not unlocked the formula. This goes into that thought where you think all this information is abundant. You can go buy $300, $400, $500, $600, $700, $1,000 worth of books. Download every PDF that you want. They're not going to do you any good. What they're going to become is the liner to your mattress. They're going to become the liner to your mattress. They're going to become that shelf. They're going to become that table for your cup of coffee, because you're not applying. You might as well just stack them all up and then if I was in that mindset, I might as well take all the books that I own, stack them up right beside me, and set my cup on. Because I'm not using these formulas to break down my humanity. I'm not using these formulas to challenge my ego and basically overwork my ego till it dies. Starving my ego. Because I'm refueling and formatting my prison cell. So think about this indirect or directly. An indirect manner of reinforcing your prison bars. You scream that you're independent. To scream that you're independent, you have to understand that requires something to be dependent upon you in order for you to be independent. That's the polarity. So on this end is dependence. On this other end is codependency. In between that is independence. Because your dependence is depending on another person's codependency of something that you're doing. So take old process. I remember being in that old relationship was narrated based upon the relationship I saw with my mom and pops. That was the first relationship that I saw. My first indoctrinated relationship. I watched my pops give his check every Friday to my mother. I watched him do that every Friday. I watched my mom sit on the side of her bed or sit at the dining room table and with her little books and pads, write out her numbers, and then go to the store, grab some money orders and send bills, pay off bills. So what I thought, like, he made enough to pay everything. Which in reality, he did make enough to pay everything. But on the other end of that spectrum, since there was no transparency or communication, that was just going with this narrative that doesn't serve a purpose in this environment, Even now, whole check go to her. She pay all the bills. I remember looking and laughing at Everybody Hates Chris. The episode when Julius said he was going to pay all the bills. And then he was looking at the math. He was looking at the math and he couldn't realize how to pay everything or when to pay everything. This is understanding the underlining opposite. The logic and reason is based on the feminine aspect of the brain. How to bring things and create based on that narrative. The masculine side of the brain is the aspect of the knowledge. The feminine aspect, or your right hemisphere, that's the aspect of creation. So I watched my mom create this narrative that fit this space. But since my pops didn't submit to that aspect based on traumas that happened in his life, he was a prisoner within the patriarchal mindset because he was raised Catholic. He went to Catholic school. He was raised in that narrative. Whereas my mother, she was raised with seeing my grandmother take care of all the bills and all that, take care of all the bills on that space. My pops never met his mother. So he never saw that happen. All he ever saw was his money that his father that transitioned going straight to his grandmother, the one that was taking care of him. So he never saw the money. So since he didn't have an understanding of that access, that axiom, he fell into the effect of doing that same thing. I'm going to do it better. I'm going to acknowledge that I'm going to do it better. This is some of that shit that you stuck within this you're stuck within this old prison system of, you'll see a video of an old head that his entire life, he'll sit there and make the statement, I paid all the bills. Your mother didn't have to do anything. I paid all the bills. That's based upon an old narrative. So you can become a prisoner to these old thought processes, but based upon your traumas, you transmute through your trauma. What do you think is transmuting through the trauma? This was bound to happen at this point in time. You think about women being gold diggers and only basically because it became service. What do you think it was going to devolve into? So when you think about that aspect, you will be a prisoner in another economic plan, trying to stay above water and try to stay afloat. These are the things that you really have to start thinking about. You following that old program, you're going to keep getting the same old results. This is like even going to the aspect of you performing magic, doing any rituals. You have to have understanding of the original practice, the fundamentals of the practices, in order for you to subsede those into your subconscious mind. So you take this narrative of being a prisoner in your own house. Some quite literally, you got 600,000 pound people. You become a prisoner in your own space because you become a prisoner to your own axioms. You created your own definition of what your independence was. You created your own definition that in reality is only layering over struggle. So you took independence, but you layered it over the subconscious original point of struggle. I'm independent because I don't want to struggle. I'm independent because I don't want to feel oppressed by anybody. So now when submission comes into the play, submission is that ultimate superpower because you're submitted to the attributes of the ideal in order to learn. You can't submit. Therefore, you cannot submit to forgiving. Since you can't submit to forgiving, you cannot submit to the humbling. Since you can't submit to the forgiving, now you can't submit to the since you can't submit to the attributes of forgiveness, true forgiveness, you can't submit to the true attributes of understanding. Therefore, you can't submit to the true aspects of humility. Therefore, you get stuck reinforcing your prison. You now got colorful wallpaper in your prison. You got a big screen TV in your damn prison. And you stuck trying. Now you have to have people codependent of seeing you being that. It blows my mind when I hear somebody say, and it's not in the tone, and there's two different tones of saying it. There's a difference between showing it, and then that is the example of your energy being in alignment. And this is what happened when you, it's different between it being an example or a physical manifestation or an example of putting your energy in order, and you're there showing it to show it. You have no way to prove what you did. It's like if I sat here right now and I was in the military and I was retired or whatever have you, or I got discharged or whatever, and actually we'll use the old heads to do that. The old head that goes to the gas station and the car wash every other day, and you see them with the nice car, you see them with the decent house, you see them with their nice clothes. But when you go ask them what did they do, they can't give you a definitive answer. All they can tell you is what they've done. So now you stuck in between that new axiom. Well, if I go to the military, do this for a couple of years, don't get killed, you don't think about that part. Just like you look at motherfuckers right now, these motherfuckers going to jail for, these motherfuckers going to fucking the military for a Charger and a Camaro. Think about what it's been boiled down to. Even if there was any aspect, motherfuckers talking about, old heads talk about the military, talking about going for freedom and freeing the country, that narrative, it's been defected all the way down because you're finding out that shit ain't true. You questioned that the entire time, and now you got people sitting here in this space, they going in there for a Charger. They going in there for a Camaro. They going in there for school. Just because it worked for them don't mean it's going to work for you. This is that part of your mind that you really got to start working that occult muscle, getting down into the actual aspects within that space. Or you're going to become a prisoner in your own space. You can have everything. Take it like this. You can have everything you need at your house. Right now, you can have everything you need at your house. You got food, you got water, you got lights, you got sanctuary. But since your mind is addicted to struggle, you're a prisoner to struggle. You're a poverty soldier. You're an oppression soldier. You're a struggle soldier. You automatically go out to find struggle. You automatically go around individuals that are struggling. Just so you can say, I'm not struggling. That's codependency. That's a big issue. In the aspect of you healing yourself, removing yourself from the crutches and the codependency, allowing to live through others vicariously because their energy is in a certain way. Yeah, like if I'm sitting here, like I'll use myself, if I'm sitting in a space and I'm chilling out, I remember being around motherfuckers that my brotherhood. I wish all of them, all my brotherhood doing the best. They doing what they need to do in their spaces in their point in time. But at a point in time for myself, I started realizing that I was not on the same path as them. It was a very big, this is another big ass shadow work moment. I was realizing that I was not on the same path as them. We may have started on the same path based upon certain acts and trauma bonds or needing a job, so you think job persecution or whatever. But after a while, I was going in a different direction. I was going in a different I was on a different path. So naturally, those conversations started dwindling. The conversation started changing. The way we were talking, the frequency of being around each other started changing. Until after a while, it was, damn, I'm back in the hermit phase. Like even right now, 90% of my day, other than if I gotta do a run to the store or whatever, or something like that of that nature, 90% of my, or go outside and stand in the sun, 90% of my shit is done inside my crib. I truly have no need for I don't need a charge from the external stimuli. Nothing out. I don't need anything outside of myself to give me a charge. Based on the basic premise, a basic thought process. But I've never felt more free. Meanwhile, on the other end, you have people that are constantly out, constantly trying to be around people. I remember having a conversation with somebody at my last job. And I remember we were having a conversation, and she had said, she was like, I'm just afraid I'm going to miss something. And it brought up this conversation I had with my mother. You're not missing anything. I remember my mom always say that shit to me. I remember my pops would always say that to me. You're not really missing nothing. I remember my father was a socialite. He was always out in the scene. And he was like, he got to a certain point to where he was sitting in the house most of the time. He had everything he needed in his crib. And he never bragged. My pops was mad fucking humble. And I got a lot of my humility attributes from my pops. My father. He never bragged. He never spoke out of this aspect. You saw him in it. You saw him in it. You saw him in this BM. You saw him in the 745. He was in the 745. You saw him in his Range Rover. He was in his Range Rover. You saw him get out with a crispy pair of slacks and some fly ass fucking dress shoes or some fly ass Durango type boots. And you saw him. You didn't. That's the aspect of you coming into your God self. As a God, as a Titan, chaos being in that level, in the higher level of aspects of self, nigga, I just gotta stand there. All I gotta do is just stand there. I don't have to do anything. To some, that's gonna seem arrogance. I remember saying at a young age about myself, I'll be like, I mean, I'm just standing. I'm already. I came here. I came here. You got to make a move. I'm standing here. Just me. Even in that space, I remember repeatedly saying this, and it wasn't ever ego. It was like I could explain the entire instance of me being there. You can ask a question. I can answer every part of the question. I can bring that shit into my favor. That's why when I remember I listened to Bobby Hemmett, and Bobby Hemmett will always say, bringing it to your favor. Everything got to be in your favor. And I understood. I was like, damn, that's what that means. Even if I apologize for something, I can clearly explain why I'm apologizing. That is a major key. Take yourself out of that prison mindset. When you're able to explain why you are sorry and explain it to the T, not in being weak, not in this, you got to get out of the fear of being weak. You got to get out of that fear of this. Remember, you got to get out of the fear of being weak. It's not weakness. You're going outside of the aspect because you're stepping into that realm based on offense. Most times when we think we're apologizing, we're in a defensive state. Most times when we taking information in a defensive state. You're taking yourself out of that defensive state and into offense. Why do you think, use this aspect in thought process, why do you think you can say all this shit about somebody? We'll say the white man for this case. You'll say whatever you want about the white man. He's evil and all these things. Meanwhile, he can just be standing there. You've given him all your energy and power, or you've given this entity all this energy and power by saying what you thought that they were. Because they can get you upset, they can get you mad. So think about the situation the next time you get upset with something. Think about being upset next time. Think about the next time that you're sad. Think about the next time that you're overexcited. Think about these aspects. And you start changing the way that you're seeing yourself in these spaces. You start seeing things based on energy. Seeing things based on energy is a true fucking factoid. There's a lot of people that hate me because I say I see energy. Your energy's not right, so I can't deal with you. Their energy's not right, I don't deal with them. Their energy's off, I can't deal with them. This is an aspect of you challenging yourself. If everybody you go around say that person's energy is not right, but you're still befriending them by being part of that, by creating that axiom, which is that friendship, your energy is automatically going to be off. It's like if I'm sitting in my house and I don't eat meat, and then somebody come in and say, yo, can I cook this chicken at your house? That chicken is a negative entity to my positive space. It's a negative energy because I don't need it anymore. Since I don't need it anymore, it automatically becomes negative. I don't need it anymore. It doesn't serve me a purpose. It serves me no purpose, so it falls below the line. I don't need it anymore. But since it's now in my space, that smell, the grease, the smell, it's in my plates, it's in all my shit. And then I'm sitting there and I'm like, and this reminds me of a story. I remember I was sitting at I had my apartment, one of my first apartments down here when I came back down here. And I was letting somebody stay, like somebody was staying with me for a couple months. And they had a lady friend come through. And I don't eat, at that point in time, I wasn't even eating swine. I was only eating, I was transitioning to vegetarian. I was only eating poultry and seafood. I remember one of my pans, they burnt one of my pans, and they burnt bacon in one of my pans. And I remember getting upset. I remember I got fucking pissed because it was a cast iron pan. I was like, so you burnt my fucking pan with the bacon in it? One, I don't eat the bacon. Now you burning it into the pan. Man, all you do is let it soak. Nigga, it don't matter how much soaking I do, that oil of that bacon is now cooked into that pan. No matter how long I let it soak, the pan's destroyed. Most of y'all walking around letting y'all shit and letting y'all custom silverware and custom cooking apparatuses get but we don't, yeah. Before this let's get to that break and we don't finish this up. Welcome to the God Hour. I now know what it means. I mean, I've had the configuring of what it meant, but I now know what it meant by when Bobby Emmett would always say a whole conversation, a whole 7-8 hour lecture would seem like 3 hours. Because now I'm in this space where I just basically put in a good hour's worth of information in that segment. That was just an hour worth of information. But let's get back into this aspect. Finish up this prison and this prison complex, and then we gonna tie off this segment. The point of no return. The points of no return. Remember, the one who controls your emotions is your master. So if you moving in a space, or you're in a space or in an environment where you're constantly having you don't have a say so. You feel like you don't have a say so. These are the handicaps. You feel like you don't have a say so. You feel like you got to dumb yourself down. You can't talk about money. You can't. There's a difference between talking about money and finances. There's a difference between talking about money and finances. A lot of the times we get stuck in these conversations talking about money. Money is simply debt. When you just look at under it, it just says debt. So when a motherfucker say we talk about money over here, all they talking about is debt. Because 9 times out of 10, decoding that fucking that axiom, they talking about money. They're talking about spending it. Even if they talking about stacking up enough money, in that same exact sentence, in that same exact line, they're going to be talking about buying something with it. I'm stacking up this bread to get this car over here. I'm stacking up this bread to do this over here. You come to a certain point in time where I remember I'm thinking about that time when that it was all over Instagram and all over social media. When the Queen, she bought her boyfriend at the time, she bought him a rental property. And he was upset because he wanted what the fuck did he want? He wanted a Rolex. He was upset because his lady bought him a rental property which can turn over enough money for him to buy as many Rolexes as he wanted. And he got mad at the Rolex. That's prison penthouse type shit. Even when it comes down to relationships. Like, even when it comes down with people dealing with people. You can have a person that has not done any shadow work or even acknowledged anything. They're in that childlike mindset. And you always see them entertaining multiple people. You see a chick entertaining multiple dudes. She meet the dude in the first damn day and then she giving it to him. Not saying that there's anything wrong with it. Because if you sure about what you want, you sure about what you want. What we're talking about is from the unhealed aspect as opposed to the healed aspect. Me being in a healed aspect of myself, even if I was tricking off, which I'm not, even if I was tricking off, from a healed aspect, there's a certain amount of work that I'm going to be putting in, and there's a reason that I'm doing it. If I was sitting here, I use an example. If I was studying my sex magic, sexual alchemy, and I really wasn't looking for a guaranteed partner type shit, I just wanted to try it out, and there was other individuals and wanted to try that same aspect, then I know before I can even step into that realm, I got to be at a certain level I got to be healed to a certain point before I can even step into that realm. Or I have to accept, either way I have to accept what's going on in there. What happens, what comes from it. This is where you go below that line and you become a prisoner to your urges. You feel like that's the only way you can get attention. You feel like that's the only way that you can get something is by giving something like that. So then when you actually meet the God on that higher level, on that sapiosexual tip, wants to stimulate your mind before doing anything else, or you meet that queen that's having her mental stimulated, you're a prisoner to your urges. So you can't even get any of that good information. You can't even get any of those good parts and good pieces. Basically, take it like this. You imagine, take the aspects of you building a house. You want to build this upscale house. You want to build this upscale crib. But you need to network with the individuals that sell upscale products or have designed upscale properties. All you're thinking about what you're putting into the house, but you ain't even thought about how you building the damn house. All you thinking about is the party you gonna have at your house. You ain't even put you ain't even laid the fucking concrete down to put the foundation on. Prison complex. All your insecurities coming up. So now you're thinking about, since you're thinking so fast in that narrative, you're going to be renting houses forever. Once again, there's nothing wrong with renting a house. But at a certain point in time, you got to go from being the renter or the player to the coach. And then go from being the coach to the player. Right now, I'm in coach mode. But my mentality is my mentality is in owner mode. I'm outside. I'm at the point of no return. I'm at that point of no return for myself in a lot of aspects of my life. There's certain things that I don't accept anymore. There's certain conversations that I don't have anymore. And this is all based upon that narrative of point of no return. You have to become comfortable with allowing those things to fall off. You ain't even got to cut them off. Just watch them fall off by themselves. Start changing your thought process. Start changing the past. Acknowledge your negative patterns and change them patterns into positives. Start disciplining yourself. Start saying, this is that point of no return. This is the aspect we don't get into these healing aspects of this. If I sit here and I'm in my space, I know that I've set parameters and boundaries about my space. Hell, I've done the spell work anyway to reinforce my already fortified space. Don't nobody come through that door. Can't nobody break through that door, break the seal on that door unless they're invited in. And if they're low vibrational, when they come through that door, they won't be able to take the energy that's in this space. From the herbs that are burned, from the sage that's constantly in burn and rotation in. You got a diffuser that's sitting over here on the counter that has white sage, frankincense, and cinnamon in it. So, cinnamon is equated to the aspects of love. That cinnamon flavor, that cinnamon aroma is equated to love. So you coming in this space, if you ain't got love for yourself, you ain't gonna look. It's gonna do exactly what it's supposed to do. That is the point of no return. You have to be comfortable in setting your boundaries so you can actually heal. Because you're going to set up multiple sets of boundaries throughout your healing process. The first boundary you're going to set up is the boundary based on your healing. That time you take away from going to this event and going over here to these spaces until you learn how to charge yourself. After you learn how to charge yourself and take charge for yourself, you may still go into that environment over there because you ain't at the point of no return yet. You're still right there. You're still right there at that line. You're still adjusting yourself to that line. You're still defining this line. There's still stuff over there. That's why you keep going over there. But after a point in time, that point of no return, your shadow is going to start doing some of the most reckless shit. And it's going to be you. I'm going to let you know this now. that shadow self of you is going to start playing the fucking role. The shadow part of yourself is the childish shit that you do, the petty shit that you do. Those are aspects of your shadow. That childishness, the pettiness, the getting upset, the not getting your way, the throwing the tantrum, taking everything in a literal sense just to serve your needs. That's all your shadow. Once you wake up, you become your two parts. Your shadow is that handicap. Your shadow is what feeds from the handicaps. It feeds from the handicap space. Think about your first house being your identity or your birth. Your second house being your conscious. You feel me? Or your mind or your brain, your mind or your conscious. Your terrible twos. You're going to go through moments in your shit where you're going to be mad at everybody. You're going to question everybody. But at that point in time, just when you got to realize, let me slow myself down. What am I really upset with? What am I really upset with in this situation? What's really making me mad? Until I'm able to bring myself down and humble myself, I won't be able to face the real reason that I'm upset. Because remember, everything's a reflection of you. So if you mad at your chick for something, you didn't humble yourself enough to understand the reason for that idiosyncrasy. The idiosyncrasy of why they do what they're doing. You don't understand the underlying aspect of why your anger is attracted to that. Why your sadness is attracted to that. Because these are those underlines. Remember, your feelings are the uncontrolled aspect. That's what comes out. That's the outward physical manifestation, or the physical manifestation of your emotion. The underline is the emotion. So until you have your emotions in order, or you're able to understand why your emotions are triggered, guess what you're going to do? You're always going to stay right before you get to that point of no return. And then you'll think that you're at a point, you're always going to be at this constant state of point of no return. So based on your decision, what are you doing from there? That's why you got some brothers out here right now. You got chicks out here right now. They certified homeless. They certified motherfucking homeless. They will not go past a certain point, whether it's in an emotional aspect, whether it's in a physical aspect of what in that nature. They won't go past a certain point because they have a need for you. They have a need for you. They won't go past a certain point. They won't break a seal because they need you for something. And then in that same light, you got motherfuckers that are across that path of no return because they know that it's going to upset you. But since they have been in this position, since they've been an associate at your firm, they've been an associate, they've been working for you for so long, they know exactly how to get back on the boss's good terms. You got a friend right now, I can almost guarantee, that never seems to be able to get right. But for the life of you, setting that boundary so you can actually step away from that is almost impossible based on your identity, based on something that you have not forgiven yourself for. You have not forgiven yourself. That's why you can't let go of them dead-end relationships. You have not forgiven yourself. That's why you can't let go of that You have not forgiven yourself for mismanaging your money or mismanaging your energy. That's why you can't let go of that damn job. That's your real reason. You accept the Axiom Effect of points of, because I don't want to struggle and I'm oppressed. So I got to get this job while the job's getting good. I remember every single day my pops would say, every single day, this one I had to stay there for a little bit, or I was just going by there in general. And I would get off work and be tired and come by the house and drop something off for my mother or when I was staying there. And he would always say the same exact thing about jobs. You know, the jobs are scarce out there. You know, it's hard work. They got you going in early. He was creating his own thought process of why I would come in late and why I would leave early. I was leaving early. I was going in early and leaving late because it wasn't because, and the reason I could do it for so long is because it was not based on, I was submitting myself to the attributes of the ideal to get something from it. Everything I was doing because I was getting the money from it. All right, go in early, leave late. That means I'm going to leave before this old man wake up, and I'm going to go to sleep. I'll be in the house when this old man go to sleep. That was my real reason for doing it. But he created this reason in his head, you know, it's hard out there and the jobs is hard, but be lucky you got a job. I remember my mom would say the same thing, and I'd be like, what are y'all talking about? I'm doing this so I don't have to be in the house. My first original statement to you, when I already set a standard, so I wouldn't have to be stuck on that line. I already made a standard that I'm going to never be in the house because I'm always going to be at work. And when I'm in the house, I'm going to make sure I'm doing something within the house to contribute to the house. So no one could ever say, because I remember where I was talking when I was little, never give someone a reason to say that they gave you something. So I was taught within that original axiom of independence, but my independence was always taught best. I was never taught independence. I was taught self-sufficiency. Every aspect of my life, I was taught self-sufficiency. Even now that I'm in this space right now, the point that I'm always in that point of no return. I know that everything that I'm doing, everything that I say, everything that I speak on, there's never no going back. I have absolutely no fear for what I say, no regrets for what I do, because when it comes back up, I can clearly explain and bringing it to the favor, not about being right and wrong. It's about making the statement with the clarity that I was in favor with what was needed to be done. That's your key. Until you're able to do that, you really ain't doing shit. That's healing. Healing is being able to do that. That's what healing is. And it's the process that goes behind that to even make you be able to do that. But in order to even start healing, you got to remove, the first thing you do whenever you're wounded is remove the shit that wounded you. If you got stabbed in the leg, the first thing you got to remove the knife. If a tree limb fell on you, the first thing you got to do is remove the tree limb before you can do anything. So when we think about why I can never seem to be healed or be happy, you got to remove the shit that's making you, you got to remove the external reflections of what's making you unhappy first. That means if you're never in a happy relationship, you already unhappy. So you're not charging yourself and making yourself happy. So now you have reflected based on you not being happy, you not being in balance with your emotion, you've attracted things that are going to only charge your imbalance. Now you got shit around you that's charging your imbalance of unhappiness. It's uncharging your ability to struggle. It's charging on this end, your independence, and it's charging on your end, the other end, codependency. Now you independent. Now you don't know what independence is. You can't go to the level of self-sufficiency because you stuck in between this realm of dependence and codependency. Afraid to actually become self-sufficient. Afraid to ask the question. Afraid to accept the answer from both ends. You're too guilty to say no, and you're too guilty to say, may I? Or can you ask the question? So now you stuck and you upset with yourself. Now you upset with yourself because now you in this position and you can't seem to get anything that you really need. As I look around the space, as I look around, that is the codependency issue. Because you feel that because something inside you, you're not nurturing. That's like take the thought process of wanting the ring, wanting the paycheck, wanting the ring, wanting that house on the hill, wanting these things, until you have created within yourself the conduits of what that is, that what you're trying to go for, what you're trying to receive. You'll never get to it. You'll always be reactive. You'll never fall into the alignment that you need to fall into. You're going to be steady sitting there in your space, upset because you can't get something, because you're in alignment with it. This is the ultimate aspect of healing is being totally fucking honest and transparent, growing in the understanding of transparency with yourself. That is the ultimate first aspect of healing. This unlocks the humbleness to forgive yourself. Being able to look at yourself, becoming the observer and the self-observed, and looking at yourself and saying, yo, I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm really not doing anything. I'm doing nothing but running back and forth and then saying that I'm doing something. Because I'm basing myself based on the old thought process or the old axioms effects that created my identity, created my life. So I'm sitting here saying that I'm trying to do better and I'm trying to do this, but then my lifestyle is not matching what I'm saying because my disciplines aren't matching my lifestyle. This is the aspect you not understanding that if your disciplines are not in alignment with your lifestyle, then you cannot have the reflection of what it is that you're going to get from your disciplines. Honesty for your ass. Being honest with yourself. If someone tells you that your energy is not right, question why your energy is not right. Why? Be humble and ask, like, why does my energy not seem right? They're either going to give you the answer or they just said it because it sounded cool. It sounded like something good to say. But think about it from this angle. Think about it from this point. If someone can clearly say my energy is not right, let me go sit down with myself and see why my energy is not right. Something I'm doing is unhealthy. Remember, everything that you think comes down in a physical manifestation, whether it be a bacteria, germ, that bacteria and that germ turns into the manifest into a full thought form, into a full-blown motherfucking person. You ever met somebody that just looks sick? They ain't really sick, but they just look sick. They look like they got something. They look like they just look. You can't explain it, but their energy is so convoluted that just standing around them, you feel yourself, you feel your natural energy. This is some funny shit. I don't like people touching me. So even if somebody has bad energy, I've learned how to shift my energy from one side of my body to the other side. I've learned how to shift my light from one side of myself to the other side of myself. So if somebody's sitting to my left side and their energy ain't right, my energy is automatically going to fleet to the other side and create it's going to leave enough energy for a barrier to be on that side. And then it's going to create this walling effect of my energy being blocked off. So they cannot touch my energy. I literally will shut the fuck down. That your body, once your auric field is in order and it's moving in maximum efficiency, it has the ability to shield you. Think about when when Bobby Hemming was talking about melanin, and once you program your body and you learn how to move your energy and shift your energy around, your kundalini energy or your energy starts doing all that work. That's what my energy does whenever I'm in a space that's not suitable for me. The first thing to shut down is my fucking voice. I'll stop talking because that's the physical manifestation of talking. Because now if you're speaking, you're going to agree to the agreement or to the terms of that agreement, even if they're not saying anything. Just by saying something to a person, just by saying some shit to a person that you don't want to talk to, just by stating that, nigga, I don't fuck with you, just by stating it, that means taking the first shot and saying I don't fuck with you. Just by stating it, you have entered an agreement with that person. Because now they can ask why. They can say that's fucked up. They're going to ask you 21 fucking questions to get the answer. The only way to shut that agreement off, shut that energy, that source of your energy being drained, is giving them the exact honest fucking truth. A lot of people cannot accept the honest aspects of the truth. A lot of people can't accept it because they have not accepted it in themselves. So if you can't accept someone giving you their truth based on what they know, based on the information that they have and they work with, if you cannot accept somebody giving you their truthful answer because you're always looking for pitfalls, or it's outside of your point, or outside of your prison cell, the shit that you made yourself a prison in, that don't make that shit. You may want to listen, because how many people have already told you that shit? If no one is telling you in your circle that you fucked up, if no one in your circle is saying maybe you should start saving, if no one in your circle is telling you or coaching you with good habits or good behaviors or good habits, how to break patterns, giving you discipline, you are in the cell block with you are in the cell block. You're not in a positive space. You're in a prison cell. It's time for that point of no return. A lot of people are suffering from their karma from shit that they've done based on Saturn being in fucking retrograde right now. It's Saturn or Pluto, or Saturn and Pluto. They're suffering their karmic debt. They didn't do what they were supposed to do and they missed their loop. And now they're looking around like, why can't I get what I need? We might keep going. Yeah, we're going to have to keep going. Stay tuned right after this. I'll flip this tape over. We back. Tell you I wasn't done yet giving y'all those nexus points. I'm always asked most times, and there's clear points that you can give, but then there's also the what's together behind it. As I said in the weekly reading, the Queen of Cups is your aspects of your empathy. So people are going to use your empathetic nature, your nurturing nature, your natural aspects of your feminine aspects against you, especially if you don't understand them. This goes for the king, the queen, the god, the goddess, the star seed, the chaos being, the chaos queen or the chaos king, whatever you may be. One of the other keys to your aspects of setting those boundaries so you actually can start the healing process is getting your empathetic energy in order. Setting the boundaries based upon your empathetic. If you know that you are super nurturing, just like when I say about if you work somewhere, if you give them 8 hours, give yourself 16. That means if you work 9 to 5, when you get home, make yourself something to eat, study till it's time to go to bed. Get to a point of study till you get to bed, turn the TV off. Now that you're watching a lecture or a documentary or whatever, turn off your electronics, give yourself 4 solid hours before you got to go to bed. On your next day off, pick up from that 4th hour and give yourself that 8 hours. Take that whole day. So you're basically giving yourself about 12 to 16 hours. Give yourself 16 hours. So when you go into the mindset of you being empathetic or nurturing or so caring, one, you're going from caring to compassion. Caring, you're choosing a side. Caring keeps you wanting to choose and keep the peace between everybody. Caring keep you wanting to keep the peace between everybody. Leo ass fucked up out here on this empathy tip because you haven't learned the boundaries based on compassion. You have to understand that others have karmic debt that they got to fill. You got to understand that other people have shit that they're dealing with, and you getting in the way is the handicap to them dealing with the shit they got to deal with. So they become your, in turn, your handicap from you. They become the handicap or your distraction because you became their handicap to their to their reaction. Now they're procrastinating doing what they need to do truly because you're there in that space. You're their line. You're their point. You're their lifeline. They know as long as you're stuck within that narrative of you haven't healed this aspect or created that boundary, they know they can attack that aspect. And that's exactly what they're doing. They're attacking it. You got to look at it for what the fuck it is. They're actually attacking that. We've all heard taking my kindness for weakness. Even if somebody betrays you or they think they finessed you, the way that you bypass that and gain your closure is setting the tone of like, you know what? You did this, you keep doing that, you don't learn. I give you this information. I gave you a place to sleep. I gave you food. I gave you a ride. I've given you everything that you would need that I can provide outside of doing it myself. And you still haven't achieved anything. You've been around me for 6 fucking months to a year and haven't learned anything. Going into that aspect, we're going to go on both sides so you see both sides of the coin. If I'm around an individual that's not doing anything and they have a sense of independence, but they haven't really created for themselves a true sense of self-sufficiency, then how can I expect that person to heal me? How can I expect that person to give me any type of information? Now, even in the information that they give me, I have to judge this. I have to look at this person also from a distance. I have to look at this person from a distance. What's their thought process? How do they gauge things? How do they go about doing things? How do they go about setting their boundaries? What sets them up? What sets them apart from the other motherfuckers that really ain't doing shit either? There has to be a reason because this person is in front of me doing the same shit these other motherfuckers are doing. This becomes your access point of seeing things within that space. being able to actually create your parameters and your boundaries based upon these thoughts. But if you stuck within these old axioms, the old effects of these old axioms, think about how, have you ever listened to somebody actually talk and they'll say some shit like, I've heard somebody say, I remember this is my second or third year working at this restaurant, working at the last restaurant that I worked at before I went full for myself. And I remember there was this dude. I remember there was this guy. He was dating a bartender at the job. And every conversation, every argument they had, his argument started the same and ended the same. He will always say, I'm trying to show you what a man is. And he was intimidated by her sense of independence and self-sufficiency. Now, she had kids, so her independence was truly self-sufficiency because the kids couldn't do anything. That's the only time, technically, when your independence is self-sufficiency. It can be deemed as self-sufficiency in certain cases. The kids were dependent of her, of course. But he was intimidated by her sense because he had a lack of it. This is a fear aspect in a lot of males and a lot of females. A lot of kings and a lot of queens. It's on both sides. This ain't no one-sided shit. Hell, women have more ego than men. So the male ego, women technically would by participle by the feminine aspect of energy have more ego than men. They have creation in their pocket. They have their hair, vanity, their sting. There's more things equated to them naturally based on ego than on the masculine aspect. Everything down to the catering of the emotion. But that's an underlining aspect when you're understanding the underlining emotion aspect. The emotions become out of balance. It's no doubt in my mind that that's the reason why the feminine can be over emotional, because it's a natural aspect of them. And when you look about that timeline for like for men that have been wounded being under emotional, when they show any emotion, it's over emotional. So take that thought process. When they show if you show any amount of emotion based on this old narrative, the old axiom point of men and women, and a man shows any emotion or any side of his feminine aspect, it's not seen because of the society, that patriarchal society. So you can't even get where you're trying to get to until you get past the point of no return of the patriarchal mindset anyway. Some of y'all are living in humanity based on a patriarchal society, when the feminine aspect is the matriarch. The higher aspect of yourself is the feminine. Creation, your imagination, your logic, these higher aspects of yourself, being able to have compassion. Caring is knowledge. Caring is based upon the knowledge that you have. Compassion is based on the application of all that knowledge that you now have. So what side of the line do you want to be on? You got to be honest with yourself. You got to set the tone based on being honest with yourself. You'll be surprised how many points, how many strings attached to one point. So when you start doing the shadow work, that's why your shadow work gets so fucking wavy, because there's so many strings leading to the same point. And once you acknowledge and accept that point where all those tethers are attached to, you literally can actually cut all these other aspects off. That's why in my dream I was telling them about earlier, last night, I'm laying there and I'm watching shit go into the paper shredder and into the furnace. And it was just feeding that Kundalini energy rising in myself. I was literally in the aspect of healing myself, putting myself in the position that I needed to be in. Since my fortress or my core is on point, it naturally creates it creates all the barriers for me. But I first had to learn the alchemical process of creating these barriers first. Now the barriers are naturally around me at all fucking time. Do I test the barriers? Sometimes. Because, but it's not on a physical aspect. I test the barrier in my mind. I literally today had a whole parallel moment about this moment right here. No lie. Had a whole parallel moment about this moment. I was watching TV. I had one of my little meatless little pot pie joints from Sprouts. And I'm sitting here watching TV and I'm watching an anime. I'm watching Black Butler. I want to say it's the 3rd season episode with the Hamlet play. I'm sitting there and I'm like, I've seen all of this before. What happened? And won't you even know it? I was watching that, but I went back to another point where if I went that route, I still would be watching that. You dig? That was the constant. I still would have been seeing that. But I realized that I just jumped from one point to another and I saw a decision being made. Like that veil is gone. Motherfuckers don't even realize we might go a little off subject and come back around. All is going to connect. If you understood what's around you and how it's connecting to you now, when you start really breaking down the psychological aspects of this, you start seeing how your energy is starting to create these things outside of you. Once you really understand that everything is a reflection of you, based on something that you have not forgiven yourself for, based on something you have not dealt with. So when you're looking at the individuals that are in your life, the biggest part of the healing process, by removing those people out of your life, and it becomes so hard to remove these certain individuals out of your life, the reason that it's so hard is because they are connected to something that you have not forgiven yourself about. Family, friend, job, whatever it is, you have not healed. You have not forgiven yourself from an aspect that's dealing with that. So you have this codependency wound up in your independence. You're independent because that's dependent upon something that you haven't dealt with. That's how it feeds from you. That's the string. So if you haven't truly dealt with traumas in your childhood, and there's individuals around you that are connected to the aspects of your childhood, the reason that it's hard for you to disconnect from the aspects and heal on the aspects of your childhood fully is because you're still connected to the individuals around you that are connected to the aspects, the conduits of the hurts of your childhood. So it don't matter how much stuff you plan, you will never be consistent. You will procrastinate. You won't be consistent. You'll procrastinate. You'll create the distraction. I got to do this, so I couldn't do this. And then you'll sit there to yourself. What are you doing in that alone time? This is the biggest part when you have alone time to yourself. What are you doing during your alone time? Are you reading something? Are you studying something? If you don't have a natal chart, hit me up for a natal chart. I'll do a natal chart analysis for you. You can have your natal chart. We go over that. There's no more excuses, basically. This is why I'm boiling it down to. There's no more excuses. You need a natal chart and you listen to this right now? Hit me up. When you get to the plug talk, it got the website, GODalchemistLLC.com. It got the email address. It got my social media sites where you can inbox or DM me. It even got the number. So what's your excuse? No one can come to me with excuses because I've created the firewall. I've created the barrier that's streaming out the information. So no one can come to me and be like, I don't understand this. All right, let's sit down and talk about it. That's the level that you're trying to get to. And I'm not saying necessarily that you're going to become a healer or a psychologist or provide that aspect to that level, but you'll be able to set your boundaries based upon being the healer of yourself. Because the healer doesn't heal you. We just show you we help you unlock the healer within you. So if you're moving in a healed aspect of balance, you'll set those boundaries and will not think nothing about it. People can be mad at me, upset at me all day. I can sit here, turn on the television, watch Peaky Blinders, watch House. And they sitting out there, they can be talking cash shit. They don't like to deal with people. He antisocial, whatever it may be. All right, cool. I am. I'm going to agree to whatever you say I am. Because I get that energy. Because now I'm in your mind as antisocial. So that's how you see me. So every time that I don't show up, you'll have a whole 15-minute conversation about me being antisocial. I'm not antisocial. You just don't go to the places that I go to. I got a whole show that if you watching this right now at 7 p.m., the God Hour show. Every Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I got a YouTube channel for Friday Night Lectures, and I'm going to start adding more stuff to the Friday Night Lectures. Adding more stuff to the channel with readings and the Meditate and Elevate. Every day that I get up after I leave the gym, I get home around 8. And from 8:15 to about 8:30, 8:45, I'm doing Meditate and Elevate. Tune in to me on Facebook. Tune in to me on YouTube. Tune in to me and listen to the podcast. Send me a text message. You gotta evolve. You gotta come up here. I'm not going back down there. I'm not going below that line into humanity anymore. Because I've done everything that I needed to do down there. I've accepted and moved on and have understanding everything that's down there. If I don't understand it, I got a clearer view up here than being down there in the shit. This is healing. I'm happy as fuck all the time. I'm in a stable mood all the time. Even when I get irritated, I'm not irritated for no longer than like 5-10 minutes. I know I need to come to myself, become quiet, center myself, and go back out. But that's all in the aspects of you healing yourself. Taking yourself to the next level, challenging yourself. And if you need that healing, if you need that aspect of that work, you need that someone to sit there with you and listen to the conversation and help you put together a plan of attack to the unhealed patterns in your life. That's why you listening to the God Hour podcast right now. We always talk about signs. You listen to this episode. You listen to this podcast right now. You got to be humble to get that information. Yeah, I had to get that out. I had to get that out, and I knew that was longer than a closeout. I was gonna go over what we doing on Friday, but that's in the plug talk. So yeah. Stay tuned for this last break from the sponsors. And if you're interested in being a sponsor on the podcast, email me, setcallerneedus@gmail.com. setcallerneedus@gmail.com to get a spot in the segment. We can sit down, break down how it works. Like, you become a sponsor, you can get you can get a 2-minute spot, 30 seconds to 2-minute spot. I'll holler to the top of my lungs, put the music behind it, make that shit real saucy, and you become a regular on the plug. You become a regular sponsored segment in the podcast. But yeah, stay tuned for this last break. You know that's how we gotta pay these bills, or become a monthly patron, and then hit me up. We're going to hit you up with the plug talk, let you know what we're talking about in that. Then we're going to come back and hit that closeout. You could have been anywhere, but you decided to be here. And that says something about the level that you're at and you're ready to go to. I love you. We love us. Ashe. I'll see y'all in a little bit. Yeah. I feel like I'm about to come rap on the track. I don't know why I did that. Welcome to the plug talk. You know, we gotta keep you plugged in with everything. Alchemist. Alchemist LLC.com. You know, that's the spot where you can get the information on readings, information on natal chart analysis, information on setting up consultations, for the life coaching, the therapy, and the counseling sessions. Classes are coming soon. Stay on the look for that. Or you can hit me up on Facebook at Rockola-Nijis. Hit me in the inbox, or you can hit me in my DM at Papa_Lucy666 on Instagram, or you hit me at GuyKing84, or you can type in Papa Lucy666 for my Twitter. Follow all the aspects, because I'm putting down more information daily. This has been another powerful episode. I'm getting deeper into the aspects of breaking down these sessions. That's what this is, like giving you the aspects, the 2 points of view, and then giving you those aspects and actually how to heal. But you got to pay attention. You got to be humble to get the information to pay attention. Changing the effects. We've been fed this placebo effect of simply setting a term and just believing. Speaking of that placebo effect, this Friday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we're going to be getting into the nocebo effect. It's actually the opposite of the placebo effect. It's what a lot of people suffer from based upon trauma. So it kind of partners and pairs well with this week's podcast episode. The nocebo effect. Let me hit that real quick. The nocebo effect, the opposite of placebo effect. Whereas the predisposition of life reflected in their environment in negative creates adverse effects to sustain that reality. The difference between knowing and knowing of is the application of the word. Living in the preconceived axiom of what our identity creates, we feel we dictate and follow. All we doing is dictating and following. If someone told me my history started in slavery, even if I search to know more, my mind only can be open to accepting based on the identity I establish within the elements of where I exist. We have to push the brain to break open the true mind. Once again, few are gonna step up and even fewer are gonna step through. And that's the key when we putting this information, when I'm putting this information out there, get that, download that channel. This is that next level so you can understand how 3D works. We're in that fifth dimensional realm. We're in our higher selves. We're achieving to get to that level. And once again, if you need that aspect of Gallico Alchemist, you hit me at the email address, papalucy666@gmail.com, or bang the number 910-777-7708. And for the business opportunities, getting a spot on a podcast, doing an episode of the podcast, and rock with me on there like that nature, set calling news at gmail.com. This has been your plug talk. Stay tuned for that closeout so we can finish out this episode. Once again, I love you. We love us. Ashe. I need y'all to understand this. There's no greater feeling than when you start setting those boundaries. There's no greater feeling than when you start acknowledging, as we did this in this episode, acknowledge the old levels and the old lines that you're afraid to cross. That is going to be the key. Not accepting. I remember listening to a Berber Panic lecture, and he had said, you got to do what black people don't do. So if somebody sets you up based upon, if like, take this aspect. If somebody was like to say, black people love fried chicken, and then I say, I don't like fried chicken, would that make me not black? Would that make me not black? Because you think about these narratives, they say black people have been oppressed for 400. Black people have been oppressed, and they're waiting for somebody to give them that nudge so they actually can get ahead. I ain't waiting for nobody to give me a nudge to get ahead. And if I was in this aspect of waiting, I'm creating a portfolio. I'm creating the portfolio to where when I'm coming into that position, when it comes time for somebody to say, hey, yo, what you got? I have a portfolio. I have an entire aspect of, I have something to give off of. And that's what this is another thought process for healing. When you are in a healed position or in the space of healing, you don't have to ask for anything, because it's naturally going to become in that space as you do the necessary work. You want love? Love yourself. You want intimacy? Have intimacy with yourself. You want abundance? You got to be abundant within yourself. You want that strength? You want that prosperity? You got to have that strength and prosperity in yourself, sis. You got to have that strength and prosperity in yourself, bro. You got to have that in yourself first before you can even go out and get that. Or else you're going to be stuck in these same old lines of being seen as the over-emotional brother because your emotions are out of balance. The over-emotional angry female because your emotions are out of balance. And you're going to keep getting seen for your truth until you accept your truth. You're always going to be seen as your truth based on the perception of another person. The only thing you can do based on the perception of another person, based on their truth about you, is learn from that space. Learn from it. Set the boundary. If somebody was to sit here and say that I'm emotional, use that as a thought process. Somebody was to sit here and say that I'm emotional. I was over emotional. I'm always angry or whatever it may be. If everybody's saying that I seem to be angry, I seem to be over emotional or whatever it is, they're not just saying it to say it. There's some truth to it, even if it's even if it's the most over exaggerated. There's some truth to it. I cannot deny the truth. I cannot deny something that is valuable if it's given to me by something that I don't view as valuable. Because my imagery is already fucked up because I'm looking at shit based upon my identity. That's one of the major keys, especially when it comes to you being stuck in that paradox or in that prison cell of things like race. You still stuck on the label of race. You still stuck on the label of these things. I'm gonna say this, then I'm gonna say it back. The people that you call racist are simply have an understanding to put their people first, put their self first. Naturally putting their self first. And they create examples based on putting their self first. Everybody seems to get it but you. You say somebody's hating on you. Why? You get stuck within a label. You let that label trigger you. You use it as your deflection. And then that becomes your perceptive. Now that's your projection. Now you project all of your thoughts and transmute through that one point. It's not cool to be broke. It's not just like I was listening to a 21 Savage interview and he was like, say, what would you tell the young dudes out here? Get a job. Because 90% of these motherfuckers out here that are saying that they gangsters, they crazy, they psycho, they whatever, they loco and all this shit. Them motherfuckers just retarded. They're slow. Ain't nothing gangster about being slow. The last time I saw gangsters, the last gangsters that I saw, them motherfuckers wore suits. My pops wore suits 90% of the damn time. My uncles wore suits 90% of the time. They were in a whole different mindset. They were in the higher aspects of themselves. The only way that you're going to get to that higher aspect is first being honest about your lower self. Get yourself in balance. Get yourself in the right position. Set those boundaries. It's cutoff season. Grab that 10 of swords. Grab them swords from that 10 of swords and complete your mission of cutting everything away. Because until then, you're going to be stuck there with your two wands on fire, burning your own hands. You're going to be stuck there, not able to use your strength and just be angry at the world. You ain't going to be able to make the connections that you need to make and make sure your cups overflow. You ain't going to be able to keep your nurturing and keeping your energy in balance and setting the boundaries based upon your empathetic nature. You're going to keep going round and round in this circle. This is the end for a lot of shit. You have two choices. Either you're going to start investing in yourself now and do that work, do that due diligent work, or you gonna go another year lost in the sauce. The choice is yours. I've already made mine. A few gonna step up, and even fewer gonna step through. It's been another episode of the God Hour Podcast. This has been your host, your master of ceremonies, your favorite or soon to become your favorite occult psychologist, Papa Lucifer. If you watching this tonight, if you watching this right now, if you listening to this right now on a Tuesday, I see y'all tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the God Hour Show. I love you. We love us. Let's get out of here. Ashe.